Well, hello and welcome back. I'm Melissa Webb, and today joining me in our homeschool interview, I actually have a set of parents. I love that we have a set of parents. Brian gets 1,000 extra points just for being here today. Sorry, Laurie. But let me please introduce Brian and Laurie Remick. We're so happy to have you here. How are you two?
We are good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm loving these. I think this is just great. I mean, it's not in person. That would make it better, but hey, this allows the distance to not be an issue or a problem. So Brian and Laurie, let's get started. We're going to be talking about socialization skills and homeschooling. It's a hot topic always. But before we even get to that, we want to get to know you as homeschooling parents. Tell us a little bit about you, background, anything that you want to share.
You go first.
I was just about to say, no, honey, you go first.
Such a polite couple.
Anything we want to share. A single-celled organism crawled out of the primordial ooze and stands before you now. We were talking about this before. It's hard to remember before we were parents. Ask me a question, then we'll get it started. Instead of just tell me about yourself. There's too much. Let's narrow it down.
Well, we can tell you we have.
How many kids do you have?
We have two boys. They're 19 and 15, almost 16.
How long have you homeschooled them? At what age did they start?
We've been homeschooling since our older one was in second grade. So probably
we figured like 12 years.
12 years or so. Yeah.
That is a long time.
We're in for the long haul.
Yeah, and I'm totally curious. Like, did you think when you started homeschooling and he was in second grade that you're like, we're going to do this for 12 years?
I think I did.
Did you?
I was more like, oh, let's give it a try. Because we can tell you more about the circumstances when we started.
Okay.
We were sort of felt kind of almost like pushed into it a little bit because I don't know if you want to get into that yet, but I was more like, oh, let's give this a try and see how it works, and we can always go back to like normal traditional school if it doesn't work.
Which I will say, Brian, like that's more how I was. I was like, I'm just gonna try this for a year. And then I was like, I'm gonna try it for another year.
Yeah.
And then
maybe one more.
9 years in, and because I do homeschool. Okay, but so yeah, we're not jumping there yet because I want to know just a little bit about yes, before you were a parent, for sure. I mean, like when you were kids, did you say, I'm gonna grow up and I want to become a homeschool mom?
No, I was not going to have children. I got talked into it.
Twice.
Evidently. As you can tell, I have very firm resolve.
Yeah, exactly. It's clear. It's very clear to me.
It's very clear. Yeah.
So then if you weren't going to have kids, what were you going to do?
That's a great question. I don't know that I got that far.
No?
Yeah. We got married. I was 21 when we got married. And I guess, I don't know. I think I just thought we would just be together. Although he did say, okay, I know he wanted to have kids.
I always wanted to have
He always wanted to. So I was like, okay, maybe one.
Maybe one.
Maybe one.
Well, okay, so then I'm going to go ahead because I already know Laurie pretty well. Laurie, you're extremely talented. You're very creative, gifted, and artistic. Did you ever have any, I don't know, ambition to be an artist or anything like that? Because you're quite talented. Or did that come later?
I think I always did kind of have an interest in like graphic design, but I don't know that. I don't know that it was, for whatever reason in my mind, in my upbringing, whatever, it just wasn't an option, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I know that sounds silly to say, but when we're young and we're impressionable, and I think I must have been. And I just think that wasn't, it's like, oh, art, starving, there's a reason starving comes before artist, right? It isn't always something that people, I wouldn't say that my family was one of those, follow your dream kind of things. It was more like find something that earns money.
I think that was very true of our generation, for sure. In fact, my mother-in-law had artistic talent early on. She wanted to go to art school, and her father really boo-hooed that whole idea and concept. Her younger sister was the star of the family because she went to Stanford. But Barbara just kept going to different small art schools. She ended up landing a job with Disney, and she actually colored in the cells for Pinocchio back in the day.
That's so cool.
And I use that as an example to people sometimes because I'm like, that is really cool. Like, who has the more interesting story? I mean, it is impressive that she got to, Betty got to Stanford.
Right.
Barbara's stories about art and Disney, and it makes her life so interesting
to
listen to. But I think that we've come a long way. Like, I don't think that was always how it was. What about you, Brian? What were your ambitions? Were you an athlete in high school or
no? I was super focused on like academics, and I think I grew up in a family where like that was very, the emphasis was really on like academic achievement. So like I went through very, very traditional kind of elementary school and then into a college prep high school, went to college, ended up getting a master's degree after that. Like that was my life before we had kids, basically. It was like career, job, and education. So but I'm a software engineer. That's like what I love to do. I grew up loving computers, and
it is your dream job.
It is my dream job. So, but I also like, I was never that into sports. I like them, but I was never very, very good at them. But I like other stuff too, music and movies and things like that. So.
Good. Okay, so I love that. And one of the questions that comes from that is, as a homeschooling parent, do you still have time to pursue other passions? Because I know enough parents are out there that they think, oh, if I homeschool, there goes all my life. There go all the things I want to do, my hobbies, my enjoyments. But I mean, I know I still pursued all kinds of things on top of homeschooling. I'm just curious, have you two been able to balance that?
I think that for myself, I did not balance it as well, like looking back. I think that if you're starting out, it's all about a plan. If you plan for it, well, I have to do this, and this, then you can find a curriculum that can match. And that's something that you'll talk about in other sessions that you have, is how do you find that curriculum? But I think that's probably, looking back, if I were to tell somebody, that would be, if you have other ambitions, then you plan around it. It's like that analogy of the rocks in the jar. I don't know if you've heard of this one, right?
I love this one.
You put the most important things in, those are your rocks. You fill it in with sand, then everything fits, or water, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's, I think Brian, he was involved, but I was the one who did most of it. But it was nice to always have him to bounce off. Okay, we would plan ahead. Okay, what do we want to accomplish?
I guarantee you somebody's watching this right now and being like, well, I wish I were Laurie, like as a supportive spouse.
Yeah.
Because not all spouses are supportive of homeschooling.
No.
Well, she's Laurie like dives into stuff like this full steam. So like she made sure that when she goes about, doing something like this, she wants to make sure she does it really well. So this was a huge sacrifice for her. Like from my perspective, I was definitely helping a little bit, but she did 90% of the work. The other thing I was going to say is, like you mentioned, do you have time to pursue other things? I think one of the things that I thought about was when we started this, we were so excited about the flexibility that it possibly allowed. We weren't sure, but we love to travel, and we were like, okay, let's make sure that we take advantage of that. And we did for years. Like, we would go on trips outside of when other people could go because their kids are in school. And we would take advantage of the fact that a lot of the stuff is online. You can do it from wherever you are.
Yeah.
And we were able to go on a lot of different trips that I think, looking back, like, we would never have been able to do that or we would have gone at very fixed points in time when it was super expensive, super crowded at the places we went. So I really appreciated the flexibility there. But
that's such a good point. I think there's so much learning that goes on when we travel places, of course, to see the different cultures or locations, all of that. But even as a family traveling together, there's a lot to learn in relationship there, which is actually a really great lead in here to talking about socialization. So what are some of the things, I know, right? What are some of the crazy things you guys have heard or been told?
I don't know that I've heard anything, but I think the impression, from what I can tell, is that a lot of people perhaps imagine our children in cages, maybe like veal. We just, have some, they're, and you don't go out, you don't leave the house, there's bars I don't know. I think in their mind, that's because the idea being, if you never see other children, which I don't know about you, but if you walk outside your house, there's generally people somewhere at the grocery store or when you go places. I mean, I think that if you just give it a little bit of extra thought, you will see there's actually a whole world outside of school. And it's not. And let's face it, what are the two biggest complaints that you probably hear about people in school? They complain that the teachers have too much to do, right? And the kids are a mess. I have Brian's aunt is a special needs, what's her title? I don't know. She helps, she's like a school mom kind of.
Aid,
special needs aide. She lives in Chicago. She's a special needs aide at an elementary school. And she was one of the ones that was a little concerned when we said we wanted to homeschool. But after we'd done it for a while, and we keep in touch with her regularly, and she's like, you guys made the best decision. Like, the kids they're just, for various reasons, their families have trouble, whatever. And we considered it fortunate. We had the opportunity and the ability to do it.
Yes.
But no, as far as, I think I probably got off topic. I'm really good at that.
You did not at all. No,
but the idea being is that there are opportunities to be social everywhere. It's not just at school.
Yes, and so that is exactly what the topic is about. Back to kind of where Brian was gonna go, and then I kind of pulled him back in, is I do want to hear your story of what brought you to the homeschooling, because you said you were more pushed than anything else. So I'm curious to know about that. And then we'll keep going with the whole socializing piece.
Sure. Like, we had some friends that had been homeschooling for a few years with our young kids. So Laurie, one of Laurie's best friends is the mom who did this. So she was more familiar with what they were doing. But I was always like, no, we're going to do exactly what I did, right? Send them to regular school. We moved into a neighborhood with a brand new elementary school. It was a great neighborhood, really supportive elementary school, and things were good for that.
You probably picked your house because it was in such a great
neighborhood. Exactly. Oh, totally. Yes. So first kindergarten and first grade, I think it was through those 2 years, was fine. And then our house got they changed the zoning in the neighborhood, and they moved our house into a zone where we went from the best elementary school in the city to the worst.
Like the lowest performing,
the lowest
one in the district.
And and not only that, and the school was, you know, walking distance from our house, but now the kids were or our son was gonna have to take a bus to this other school, and we were just shocked. We were like,
Like literally drive right past this the
Yeah.
best school to the other one.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
so that was making me really uncomfortable. I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. And that's when, so not that we were like, we didn't want to try homeschooling, but this was a perfect opportunity to try it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I will say I was very hesitant, like going into it. I was, because, you know, growing up, you asked like, what are the things you heard about, you know, you always kind of, the homeschooled kids were always the outliers, and
Right.
and you'd hear like, oh, they're socially awkward and weird and something's wrong with them because they're like, that's what I grew up with. So it was a very different, for me, very challenging to sort of just get comfortable with this. And then, but I mean, I don't have any regrets about it.
Well,
But,
and then
like,
I wanted to also add a big concern of his was, you know, he wanted the children to go to college.
Mhm.
And that was, to him, that was, you know, how do you go from homeschool to college?
Mhm.
And how will they even accept that? And so when we, you know, we early on made a plan of what we wanted to do, and, you know, based on, you know, what I know you're going to be in different states and everything, but in California, you know, we have certain opportunities. I'm sure other states have something similar, and we took advantage of those opportunities. And our older son, it was able to enroll in a University of California. So with zero problems, like zero problems.
Yes.
There was no question about whether or not he was able to be there.
Yeah. Well, and again, going off of what Brian said, there are these stigmas, these stereotypes. They're still there. They are still there. But I think people are becoming more knowledgeable on the options.
Mhm.
And when more families like yours go through the system and then end up in college and say, hey, there was zero problem transferring, you know, our high school units into college. Like that's the stuff that needs to get out there so that people know, oh no, it's perfectly possible. Perfectly possible.
Yeah.
So back to like your impression, Brian, was like people who homeschool, like there's like this social awkwardness there. Were you honestly ever, Brian, concerned like, oh my goodness, if we do this, are our kids going to be socially awkward? Or by that time, were you like, oh, you were, okay.
Yeah. Because I was thinking like, oh, they're gonna, you know, even if the kids that you hang out with at a traditional school aren't maybe the best influence, I have, you know, I guess I was thinking, well, they have to experience that, right? Otherwise, how will you learn how to deal with people of all different personalities? And if they don't have that experience, they're going to end up super sheltered, and like they won't know how to interact with people. As soon as they encounter someone who's like a little bit off from just their norm, they're going to struggle. So and that ended up not being the case at all. But
then I piped in.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, what would you two say to a parent who felt like Brian did? Like, what would you say to them today with the 12 years experience behind you?
I mean, I told, because these were his concerns, and as I listened to them, I kind of piped up saying, well, let me ask you a question.
Like you're good at that.
I missed what you said. What?
You're good at that. Turn it back.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you.
So I said, you know, when you're a kid, who runs the world? Adults do. Of
course.
You know, one of the things that, you know, as a kid, most of us, you know, if we ever did anything impressive, an adult would say, wow, they were, you know, clearly impressed by what we had done or whatever. Who do you interview with when you go for a job? It's not another kid. It's an adult. So, you know, if you're going to be able to relate to anyone, I would say, if you had to choose, say you had to choose, your kids can relate to other kids or they can relate to an adult. I would choose an adult. That's me personal.
Yeah, me too.
Other people, maybe not. But in my understanding, if you can relate to an adult,
you're going to go
things will go better for you, because that's going to be a sign of maturity. Now, it turns out, as I think we've learned, kids will naturally do their own kid stuff anyway. And, and many people in a homeschooling environment either have a community, they have neighborhoods, friends, a church group, whatever it is, that also has kids. So the chances that they're going to be completely isolated from any other kids in our country are pretty slim.
Yeah, extremely slim. And you bring up such a good point. Like, knowing how to converse with grownups has long-term positive implementations, right? Like, the effects on that are going to be really beneficial to most people. And I've said this before, that I have spoken with middle school students that are going to a school of 2,000, and I can point out some socially awkward kids there. I can point out some kids who cannot communicate with adults, and also ones that they fit in perfectly. Everything seems fine and healthy. When I go to the homeschooling community, I'm sure there are some socially awkward kids, just like there are anywhere. But what I noticed that's different is more homeschool children can have a conversation with me, look me in the eye, and we can actually go a little deeper than I can with, and I mean, this is just generalization, but overall, this has been my experience. The communication skills are better, which to me is a socialization skill, is communication. Is better with homeschooled children. Because was it you, Laurie? Somebody said something about, well, your kids are just going to be a reflection of the parents, right? And the adults that they're around. And so, yes, if you're with a socially awkward mom and you're homeschooling, there may still be some social awkwardness.
Well, and to add to that point, a small anecdote, if you will, when my older son was younger, he didn't speak till he was probably like 2.5. It took him a while. It never occurred to me, as a parent, your gut says something, right? There's a basis for intuition. My gut told me he just doesn't have anything to say. But other people, of course, in the medical community were concerned. He underwent some tests and everything to determine, is there something going on up here? There is, and I remember asking the doctor, and I didn't get an answer. What's the difference between a disorder and personality? We don't all have the same personality, nor do we want it.
No.
But our child's personality may be awkward. Children can be awkward, right? Especially as teenagers. So we have to factor that in as well. Yeah. Our child's personality is going to also influence how they're perceived. When they're home, you may be able to do more molding. I know that in your lessons, you like to teach about your mind and your body connection, and how our thoughts can help us or harm us. When you're at home, you can maybe teach some more of those lessons, as opposed to that's something that we've talked about this before, they don't teach in school.
No, that's where labels,
emotional intelligence, right?
Right. No, instead they label. They just label, well, that kid's this or that kid's that. Whereas at home, you're right. It's a hands-on experience where we have an opportunity to teach and mold and model for them, how we do this. That's really good. So then this concept where people think that children that are in an institutionalized brick and mortar, school are better socialized, right? Because I mean, that's the impression that I think people believe. If
Right.
they're concerned that homeschooling means they're not going to be socialized well, then they're assuming that, right, that the building, the campus has
Right.
all socializing beautifully over there.
Mhm.
And I would just love your thoughts on that.
I
True,
think that people believe what they're told more often than not.
Ooh, unpack that. I like this.
I think that it's presented as a choice. You can have this or this.
Mm.
And so they think, and most of us, we went to school, I went to public school.
Mhm.
When I remember Brian was asking about, how will they learn to deal with different personalities? I'm like, I don't know. How many people do you know had to go to therapy because they had such great experiences in junior high?
That is such a good point.
It's a little bit like Lord of the Flies out there. You never know what's gonna happen.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know that those, I cannot definitively say that the negative experiences that I had made me into a better person.
Right.
I think that's a key thing, like your own experience as a parent going through that influences what you're going to think, right? Like
Absolutely.
so I had my experience in like junior high and high school was fine, mostly because I think I was just oblivious to what was going on, but I didn't have the same experience that she did. So like if I had gone through and had a really horrible time in junior high, I probably would have thought a lot differently about this.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me to go back to junior high. No way. No way. Yeah.
But I also think it depends on the kid too, like a little bit, right? Like if and I mean I haven't seen any like formal studies of this, right? Of like which child is better socialized in which environment, but I'm sure it depends also on the personality of the kid and the people at the school that you're going to, because you can easily have really bad influences at a school, and what you might consider as good opportunities for socialization actually are your kid is hanging out with horrible people and getting involved in stuff you would never want them to. So
Right.
I
and
guess
you don't have any control over that, right? So
I guess I would say just because the majority of people do something doesn't mean it's the best choice for you. And the fact that we have these opportunities, and homeschool has come a long way.
You've seen it.
There was not, when I was a kid, it really wasn't an option. And because there's so much, I think then you'll get into the other problem in your other interviews where then people are like, I don't know what to do. There's so many choices.
Yes.
But that's just it. We have the opportunity to do something different.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people will say they don't like where education is going right now. And for me, instead of railing against the system, and instead of trying to change that from within or even from without, I decided that wasn't where I wanted to focus my energies. I was going to focus my energies on my kids and do what we thought was the best choice for us, for our family.
Yeah, I love that. So if somebody is holding off on homeschooling just because their number one reason is like, I just don't want socially awkward kids, what would you say?
You won't.
You won't. And so I have to ask, are your kids socially awkward?
No.
Are they?
Not anymore.
I don't know, Melissa. You met one of them.
None of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, he had no problem communicating.
No, and the other one is in our opinion, he's fine, and it seems like most of the people also. In fact, he just told me the other day, because he's on break from college,
Okay.
but I guess he got an email from some of the people in one of his classes saying, hey, we're gonna go get pizza and beer or something, do you want to come? Well, he's only 19, so no beer. I don't know, but I thought, I thought that was interesting. Here's somebody, he only showed up for a few classes, right? And he got an invitation. I think that means something in my book. If people want to spend time with you, it means they're okay with you.
Yeah, they're including you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was just the only other thing I would add is that obviously if you send your kid to a normal brick and mortar school, you don't have, you should be involved as a parent in understanding like who your kids are hanging out with and stuff like that. But a lot of it just sort of comes with, you don't have to be so proactive, hopefully, right? As if you're homeschooling, you do have to be somewhat proactive to figure out, okay, I can't just keep them at home sitting in front of the computer all day.
Right.
Like, how are they going to interact with people, whatever that means?
Right.
So
intentionality, yes.
Yeah, so you have to think about that a little bit, and make sure they have those opportunities. It doesn't have to be like, I'm gonna get them together with 50 kids every week, but I think it does take some planning. And I know we went through, Laurie went through years of that, right? Trying to figure out opportunities for different places they could interact with other people. And I think that was an important thing that I wouldn't sort of dismiss as, oh, it'll happen, because I do think the parents have to be involved in planning it.
I love your point. It's proactive in a different manner. And I read an article years ago that said, statistically speaking, well-socialized people, and again, we even have to define, like, what does that even mean?
Right.
In a community, socialization is being able to be included, to be able to communicate. But in this article, it said the well-socialized child on average is involved in 3 social groups, right? We learn our social skills in social groups. And I'm with you. Like, I don't see, I mean, I'm sure there's probably an exception, but most homeschool moms and dads tell me, it's homeschool, but we're hardly home, right? Like,
yeah,
the word may not be the perfect word for what we do, but 3 groups is adequate for building good social skills. So like you were mentioning earlier, Laurie, like that could be a church organization. You could put your kids in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or join a swim club or a soccer club. I mean, there's so many ways that we can engage our children, and smaller groups are better than that. I've got to get my kids around 50 other kids. No, you don't.
right.
So yeah, very good point though, right? The proactive looks a little different. Definitely get involved. And so as we kind of start to wrap up, what were some of the social things that you guys did, groups you joined, or things that you felt, especially if people are like, yeah, what kind of things can we do? Do any ideas come to mind?
I mean, with the charter school, when if it was a new semester, new year, and we have our funding where you can spend on things. So I would sometimes look for, my kids did not like to go outside. That's for lack of a better way to put it. They are indoor children, but again, that's personality.
Right.
Try though I may, it was just like some people may have trouble getting their kids to come in from outside. I had trouble getting my kids to go.
Did they like field trips? Did they like going on field trips?
Didn't like a lot of.
No, they didn't really like.
Didn't like a lot of stuff.
That's like most kids love the field trips.
Yeah, most kids. So I also had to get past that idea of my kids were not like most kids.
Yeah.
They of course they have, I love my kids. They have great ideas, and I think they're wonderful writers. And there are some people I know who also think they're good writers. And and they have a very rich internal socialization, if you will. But I would try and the school sometimes will offer field trips, so we would try and take advantage of those. And you would go to, I remember one we went to, we're in Northern California, so we did a trip to the Elkhorn Slough, which is in, it's near Monterey. And you took like it was like a pontoon boat, and you would take it through, and they had tons of otters and seals and all sorts of really cool things to this whole area that, slough sounds kind of gross, like, who wants to sludge through the mud or the marsh? But no, it's a waterway, and it's just brimming with activity. And that was something, not only did the school pay for it, but I loved it too. Like, that was super cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had a couple of, Brian took the kids to one. It was what was that boat?
Gosh, I was thinking about that.
It was the boat is actually called the Ladyship Washington, but they spend their time going back and forth up the coast, like California, Oregon, Washington. But you might know it as the Endeavor from Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh,
So there's
one
this
of those like old
real
school
ship
boats, yeah. And that was fun. They had like a whole crew that lives on that boat and tours around and does like these events. And so the kids would go on and they would do all the activities, like pull up the sails and whatever, like all the different, I don't remember all the different things they did, but like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that you guys have shared the experience.
Yeah, that was one time that he wasn't able to do a lot of them, but that was one that he was able to plan ahead and take time to do. And he loved it.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome. What about other like group things? Have you ever found like a chess group or something? I'm trying to think what other things you may have even found, since you do have kids that are, I would say, very intellectual. And they need that kind of stimulation. They don't want to run around a playground in circles.
Right. I mean, they did do that. They did like to run around in circles and on the playground. But no, there were clubs and stuff. I don't want to burst your bubble, but my kids were not. I would offer them like, oh, look, there's a Lego club. Oh, look, there's this. No, it's okay. Like, they didn't want to do a lot of those things. So we did
try it. Like, I remember this was this when we moved to California? There was like one of those Lego after school kind of Lego programs that we thought our younger son would be really into because he loves Legos.
Yes.
And he was not really, like, we went a few times. He wasn't into it. Like, he would rather, he wasn't enjoying the projects that they had or whatever. So, but we did try a few of these things.
Oh, and there was a like kind of like the little gym. There was another.
Yes.
It was like little gymnastics for kids or whatever. And my younger son, he enjoyed that for a little bit. Okay. I mean, you just you try all you try a bunch of different things. See what the school has to offer. Ask your ES what other kids are doing. They should know. And you can even search, like, I know on our website and IEM's websites, like, you can just type in the vendor, like, you can type in what you're looking for, like if you wanted athletics or sports or cooking or crocheting or whatever, like within the description. Which is how I found this woman who makes this writing course. I typed in and who's this? Write on web. I'll give it a try. And you just type in the things that you'd like to know, and voila, here's a whole list of vendors that you can do. And I think that, I guess, what's the bottom line? School is important for a couple of things. We're training our kids, in my opinion, to be self-sufficient, independent, but also useful members of society.
Yes.
Now, if that's the goal, then let's find things that can help achieve that goal.
Yeah. And that's kind of back to making that plan of what that's going to look like For sure. Well, and I just love all the things that you shared, because again, especially for anybody who's considering homeschooling and you're wondering, how do we socialize? We just threw out at least half a dozen ideas right there. And you, if you choose to go with a charter school, which we highly recommend, it's a great way to connect with others. And it's a great way to find social groups and really fun things for your child to try out all the things until they find that something that they really love. And all good, all good. All right. Well,
the other thing I was just going to mention, she's found the other thing I think worked well was when you go to these events, talking to the other parents and getting to know, because then you start to find more connections to more people. Like she's met a few friends from these events that they still keep in touch, and now their kids are our kids' friends. So like that's another way to extend the value of these events, I think, more than just going to the event itself.
Yeah, building your own.
Yes.
It is your own form of networking, and it does build community. And yes, so Laurie, just a little back note on Laurie and me, we met because she did enroll in a course, but I also did some other webinars and she kept showing up, and I'm like, I like this mom. And you're no longer
being supportive.
But we still have a friendship through it. And so I love the doors that it opens in the homeschooling community that I think it's very special. I don't think you get it just anywhere. And so really good. Okay, final thoughts. Any final words, wisdom, encouragement, anybody who might be considering homeschool but is worried about this social piece, what would you tell that person?
What would you tell them, Brian?
I would say not to be overly concerned, but not to go into it lightly either, like just because it does take a lot of work and I'm saying that on your behalf. I know how much work she has put into making this a good experience for the kids over the last 12 years. Yes. So as long as you're committed to it and definitely the landscape has changed so much since we were kids, and even since we started. Like there's so many more options, so much more in terms of resources. So I think it's becoming easier and easier to do this. So I don't regret it at all. Like I went into it with very
trepidation,
lots of hesitation, and that's sort of like, no, I don't even consider that anymore, and that doesn't even cross my mind. So,
and I would say if you have any questions, concerns, I know a woman, her name is Melissa Webb. Her address is melissa@rightonweb.com, and she responds and she has great ideas, and anything you want to ask her, she will point you in the right direction.
Oh, you are so sweet. Thanks for the little boost there at the end. I love
no
it.
problem.
I love it. Well, thank you both so much for being a part of this interview series. I thank you so much for your time, your input, your wisdom, and I wish you both all the very best.
Thank you.
Back at you, friend.